Hello, everybody. Armchair updates. Going to break down week 11 on this Wednesday morning, afternoon, where it is, for the first time in weeks, not hit 90 degrees yet here in western Colorado. A little overcast. Maybe this carries. I don't know. The Rockies aren't home tonight anyway. Doesn't matter. What I was about to say was irrelevant. But what is relevant is checking out week 11, where I will say real quick, I personally was thrilled to grab a win against the Astros. I thought for sure I was done for going 0-2 in the week. Had a tough week against the Astros and the Blue Jays. Knew I was going to get stomped by the Blue Jays, and I did. But actually pulled it out against the Astros. Was thrilled to grab a win there and keep my meager playoff hopes alive. Let's check out the rest. Oh wait, no, that's not what we want. That's the other stuff. That's not what we want yet. We want to take a look at the standings. There we go. So let's take a quick look at the records. We're back to having several teams going undefeated, whereas in week 10, I believe there were only 6. The Tigers, stop me if you've heard this one. The Tigers, the Pirates, the Mariners, the Dodgers, the Twins, and the Jays all go undefeated, 3-0, 2-0 for the Jays. The Cubs go 2-0. And then got another couple teams that it's kind of nice to see back up in this kind of tier. The Phillies, after a couple of tough weeks, I think of going 0-3, they are back to going 3-0, and as we'll see in a little bit, did it as they kind of usually do on the shoulders of really nice hitting. The Orioles go 3-0, and I feel like the Orioles are a team I'm going to take a little bit of a deeper look at some point, because I feel like they're showing up on – he's shown up on the points per game list either last week or the week before. He's shown up in the big hitting, and yet when you – and I know he's gone 3-0 a couple times, maybe 2-0 one week, but when you look at the Orioles' overall record, it's not that great. But I feel like the Orioles I've seen perform well, and maybe they're running a little bit below expectation. Have to look at the power rankings for that probably. The Twins, man. The Twins, I think, are ready to start being talked about like in that high upper tier, the Tiger, Pirate, Cardinal, Dodger, Mariner, White Sox kind of tier, because he's no longer tough luck Tyler. He's still had injuries and stuff, but this team is working. It's hitting on all cylinders. It seems like he's going 3-0, 2-0, whatever it is, every single week for the last several weeks, and it wasn't just getting Bellinger back that did it, because getting Bellinger back didn't do a whole lot for him. So this is just a well-oiled machine that's really been clicking the last few weeks. The Cubs 2-0 continue to ride relief pitching and timely hitting. The Jays mostly on the backs of their pitching again. 2-0. So 9 completely undefeated teams this week, and then your 2-1 teams were the White Sox, the Red Sox, the A's having a good week, the D-backs having a nice week, a nice 2-win week, and the Yankees getting a 2-win week. We had 2 teams go 1-1, myself, the Rockies, and then the Mets, who, if I'm being honest, I need to lose if I'm gonna squeeze out that last playoff spot. I need them and the Braves and the D-backs to all lose. The Cardinals and the Padres, just go down the list here, actually, of top teams dropping, having a losing week. The Cardinals, the Padres, the Marlins, the Rays, all going 1-2, and the Astros going 0-3, and the Angels going 0-3. So it took me several weeks of being surprised by the Angels for them to finally go 0-3, and then the week that he did it, I'm pretty sure the Angels still scored 323 points. So he actually had a really good week. That would have been my best week yet. And still takes a really tough 3 losses despite putting up well over 300 points. Excuse me, send a text really quick. There's a crazy man in the parking lot apparently at the gym, and she doesn't want to get out of the car. So don't get out of the car. If you don't, let's go park somewhere else and get out of the car. Just don't do the worst possible thing, which is like get out and provoke a maniac. The Astros, one of their 0-3 losses was a tough one to me, which showed up on the slim loss list. The Brewers go 0-2. The Giants go 0-3. So the two new owner teams, taking over sinking ships and trying to right them, which they are doing a good job in. But we're not going to expect to see these guys going 3-0. They've dealt big pieces. They're clearly rebuilding, retooling at the very least. And yeah, they might rise out of the bottom 5 points standings and stuff, but it's not a surprise to see a lot of the teams that we're going to be consistently seeing kind of lower down here. The Nats, the Clevelands, these guys right now through a combination of trades, rebuilding trades, and injuries still are putting up, for the ABL, the short history of the ABL, historically low scoring numbers. But that's not unexpected. These guys made dump proclamations. They made their deals. And this is what we're going to see probably moving forward. We'll get a little bit more idea of what I'm talking about when we get to the other stuff. We saw some tremendous margins of victory this week. She is reparking away from him. He's on the side of the building and weird shit happens there. Yeah, I would not. I'm not interested in anything happening on the sides of buildings. Get away from the sides of buildings. Who else? The Royals dropped 2. The Rangers dropped 2. The Reds dropped 2. We get this many teams going undefeated. Somebody's got to rack up the losses. Only Dwight and I were lucky enough to split the week totally. So, and again, I was pretty thrilled about that. I allowed way more points than I scored. So very happy to sneak out of there with 1 W after really thinking up until late Sunday night that I had lost. Before getting into the other stuff, I did want to mention, I didn't bring it up last week, but Tony he's been crunching the numbers on his own, because we were kind of curious, like how often a team making the full 7 starts makes that much of a difference in their matchups. I don't remember what he gave me last week. I didn't go back far enough on the Discord to look, but this week, and this is obviously excluding the matchups where both teams had 7 starts, but in any matchups where one team did and the other team didn't for whatever reason, the teams with 7 starts went 23-12. And I believe the week before it was about skewed the same way, that the teams making the 7 starts, which is what you would think, are scoring more points and winning more games, but it's a pretty significant difference. 23-12 is, it's not just the pitching, but this is 2 weeks now that he's been doing it, and last week I didn't mention it, but the results were fairly much the same. So this is 2 weeks running now where there is a significant line one way or another on, well, yeah, you definitely want, as if you needed to be told that, you definitely want to get your 7 starts in. But I didn't want to forget to mention that. It's kind of a funky week. The Cards, the Marlins, the Padres all going 1-2. A lot of division leading teams having a rough week. But the week before, there were the White Sox went 1-2, the Phillies went 0-3. I don't recall if the Cardinals had a tough week before that. Maybe the Mariners, but this stuff happens. The good teams play each other. Shit has to stop for these guys at some point, the good teams play each other. Somebody's got to lose. And the rest of the stuff for week 11, let's get into it. Your biggest – now, we didn't eclipse the biggest big margin of victory, which was the 346, I believe, points that the Dodgers beat the Nationals a couple weeks ago. But this was the first week where we have had the top 5 big margins are all over 200 points. And you notice that, yeah, it's 2 Cleveland games and 2 Washington games with a San Francisco sprinkled in. Like I just talked about, these are rebuilding teams. These are teams that have moved big pieces, or in the case of Cleveland, also have had some injury issues. He's also moved some pieces, but this might be a better snapshot of what we get going forward now that some of those huge trades have been made, now that some of those dump proclamations have been made. We're going to see some teams putting up short points, and we're going to see the big teams continue to put up big and maybe even bigger points as they acquire more pieces, or guys get healthy or guys get hurt. We just had some guys go down yesterday. Stroman goes down. I don't know if Wheeler was hurt. I think he just got beat up, but it's still a long season. We're still not even to the break yet. But I think this on the big margin side, I think this might be a little more in line with what we start seeing. A lot of games over, maybe not necessarily over 200, but big victories. Your big one this week, the Chicago White Sox over the Nats, 302.5 points. So, 300 is a pretty big win. As I said, the 346 for the Dodgers over the Nats. So the Nats have now shown up twice with a couple 300-point losses. 300 is still pretty big no matter what. So it's not like, oh, well, Harry just won because he played the rebuilding team. Like he put up big numbers as well. He was number 2 in pitching, number 3 in point per game. Number 2, St. Louis over Cleveland, 283.166 points. So nearly 300 there. And then we drop down to 250.833 for Philadelphia over Washington. Nice interdivision smackdown for the Phillies on his way to a 3-0 week. Also on his way to a 3-0 week were the Twins, putting a hurt on Cleveland, another interdivision match, 229 points. Put a real – so Cleveland and Washington take the top 4 spots in the losses. And then the last one, San Diego over San Francisco, 204.5 points, another interdivision. So not all of these, the bottom 3 were interdivision games, but the top 2 were not. They were both interleague, actually. Your smallest margin, so St. Louis, number 2, biggest margin, and then St. Louis lost in the number 1, smallest margin. Pittsburgh over St. Louis, 3.17 points. So three and change is a pretty slim margin. That's a double and an RBI, or a home run, or a hold, or you could, one of those ones where you might kick yourself for something that you perceive you did wrong. I should have, at the time I made the right play, but that guy ended up scoring 4 points or 3.5 points. It would have won me the match. Blah blah blah. That's a rough one. The Rockies, my Rockies beat the Razors Astros by 8.5 points. So another thin margin for Ray. He's been on this list a lot. 8.5 points. And number 3, the LA Dodgers beat the LA Angels by 9.833. So like I was saying earlier, the Angels put up 323 points, had a really nice week to go 0-3. That is a tough sweep that he took for scoring 300-plus points. And one of the matches was by fewer than 10 points to the interstate rival Dodgers. So, yeah, rough week for the Angels. I know I've been saying, I don't know how he's doing. I don't know how he's doing it, but he's been doing it, and he did it again. He put up 323 points. But, man, he just ran into some buzzsaws. Your number 4, small margin, the White Sox over the Cardinals again. So the Cardinals, all 3 matchups have shown up on the biggest or smallest margin list, and the 2 on the smallest are losses. The White Sox over the Cardinals, 13.83 points. And then number 5, Seattle over San Diego, 14.67 points. So the Cardinals show up on the biggest and smallest margins, all 3 games. San Diego shows up in 2 of his 3 games, one being a huge win that he had, another being a slim loss that he had. So scheduling just makes such a huge difference. You can have these monster weeks and still end up looking terribly. And counter to that, I've done it, had a pretty bad week and gotten away not so bad. You just happen to play a couple of teams that maybe managed to score worse than you. You know, I've been on the receiving end of both of those situations. So, but some of these guys, a little look ahead, like when All-Star break gets here, I plan on doing, you know, we'll just call it halfway through the season or whatever, but we'll have a break to do such things. I'm going to go through and tally up like how many times each team has shown up on each list. And I think, you know, I'm pretty much just doing the work that the power rankings already do, I think, like for the most part. But I don't know. I guess if I sit and do it like that, I find it easier to break down. I don't know. I don't want to, like, you know, disparage the power rankings and all because they're awesome. But to me, when I bring them up, it's just a flurry of data and shit and I'm looking at, and some of the colors get mixed up for me a little bit. So anyway, I think I'm going to do that at the middle of the year at least. See how many times teams have shown up in these arbitrary lists that I make. Points per game, week 11. Detroit setting the season mark at 5.28 points per game in 84 games for week 11. The high before that was the Dodgers, 5.16 in week 7. We've had a couple over 5, but that is the new week high in single week scoring, 5.28 for Detroit. So hell of a week for the Tigers. And we dropped down quite a bit to number 2, to 5.28 to 4.65 for Seattle in 75 games. Still a damn nice week, but just when you got 5.28 towering above you, doesn't ring the same. The White Sox, these are a lot of guys that we've seen before. The White Sox at number 3, 4.64 points a game. Pittsburgh coming in at number 4, 4.5 points in 79 games for both the White Sox and Pittsburgh, actually. And then number 5, Baltimore. Baltimore sneaking in the point per game. He went 3-0 this week. In 68 games, he averaged 4.44 points per game. So a team that overall is, let's see, what is Orioles Randy? They are overall 13-18. But I know I've seen them on some of these good lists more than once, and he sneaks in here a 13-8, a sub 500 team by more than a few games, sneaks in and is number 5, kind of like the D-backs did, a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Sneak in on that top 5 points per game. Did it in fewer games than the other top 5, but still he's there, and he went 3-0 this week. Good for him. Good for the O's. Hitting week 11. Let's just get it out of the way now. Detroit swept. He swept. The points per game, 5.28 points per game. He was the number 1 hitting team, 235 points. He was the number 1 pitching team, 208.33 pitching points. Detroit had a hell of a week. He didn't set, the biggest win of all time or anything, but give it to Detroit, man. He still only has 3 losses on the year. There's a couple teams, the Dodgers and Pirates only have 4. Nobody with 5, and then a couple teams with 6. But Detroit is built a hell of a machine up there in the Motor City. Swept, points per game, hitting, pitching. Philadelphia makes their way back into the top hitting teams with a 209-point hitting week. So he goes from not being in the top 5 last week, and before that had been in there a couple times in a row, to now launching back up to number 2 overall. Got healthy, maybe got Harper back. I don't know if Harper was back all last week, but Philly looking good again, carrying the bats. St. Louis in at number 3, 199. Actually, it's St. Louis and the Dodgers, 3 and 3A, 3 and 4, however you want to say it, 199 points each. And then Pittsburgh at number 5 at 190 points. So not a whole lot of shuffling in the top hitting. Last week it was Cubs, And then Pittsburgh, White Sox, Detroit, Dodgers. We've seen Pittsburgh, Detroit, Dodgers here in the top 5 again now. A lot of the same guys showing up in the hitting. A lot of the same guys showing up in the pitching. Number 1, we already said, was Detroit. Number 2, the White Sox. We're used to seeing him here, 190.17 points. Number 3, Toronto, back in the top 5 again. After being number 2 last week, Mark takes number 3 this week, 182.833 pitching points. Then take a little bit of a dip, just a little bit, to Seattle. Once again, top 5 in pitching, 169.667 points. He took a break last week, and Tampa Bay got in there, and the Cubs got in there. But Seth is back this week at number 4. Number 5, Pittsburgh, 165.5 points. And overall, the pitching this week, quite a bit better than last week. The top 208, the Tigers beat themselves. They were top week 10 at 166, but had a huge week this week. Number 2 last week, 162. Week 11, 190. So just overall, the top 5 pitching teams better, and overall the top 5 hitting teams better. It was just a higher scoring week, it seems, week 11 than week 10. Your points per game on the season, a little bit of shuffling, not a ton, but the Chicago White Sox move into first place. Pittsburgh was 4.29 last week and number 1. Chicago White Sox go up to 4.29 this week and take number 1. Pittsburgh drops down to 3rd with 4.25 points average on the season. And St. Louis moves back up from number 3 to number 2. He goes from 4.23 to 4.27. So despite the record not necessarily showing it, Jeff had a pretty good week. So kind of like the Angels, Cardinals had a pretty good week and took a couple tough losses. Number 4, the Dodgers. Joe's sticking right where he was. He was number 4 last week at 4.21. He's number 4 this week at 4.21. And Detroit was holding number 5 last week, 4.19. He's holding number 5 this week at 4.19. So some amazing consistency being displayed from these teams we're seeing routinely in the point per game on the season. Seeing some shuffling happening, but generally the same 5 guys week in and week out. I think the Jays have held the number 6 spot either the last 2 or 3 weeks in a row. Perrier Lime out of the plastic bottle. Holds a little more. Doesn't get that super mineral taste. Your hitting teams for the season pretty much stay the same, with the exception of Philly moving back into the top 5 spot, kicking the Cubs down to 6, I believe, down to 6. But the rest of the same 5, just as we left them, just as they've been since I started putting it on here. Dodgers at 1, Pittsburgh 2, Detroit 3, St. Louis 4, and then Philly puts up a 19-12 overall to kick the Cubs out. So we could see some jostling between those 2 guys. I still think that potentially we could see some shuffling in the top 5 still. None of these guys are like really pulling away with it. Some injuries or some down weeks, and we can still see some shuffling. Same goes for pitching, which by and large has remained unchanged. The top 3, the White Sox, Seattle, Detroit, all unchanged. Toronto, number 4, just as he was last week. Actually, yeah, the whole damn thing is unchanged. St. Louis, number 5, just as he was last week. And they're all within a couple hundred points of each other. Chicago, 1990.83 at number 1, and then number 5, St. Louis, 1837. But it would take some doing for St. Louis to take number 1. Seattle's right there. Detroit's right there. So those are your pitching guys. And your bottom teams in the hitting and pitching, pretty much staying the same. Maybe a little bit of shuffling. Cleveland, Washington, San Francisco, Oakland, Atlanta, they were all 5-4-3-2-1 or 30-29-28, however you want to look at it. They all remain the same. And the pitching had some small shuffle. It goes Texas, Cleveland, Cincinnati, which were the bottom 3 last week. And then Washington moves into the 4th worst. And San Francisco moves into the 5th worst. Arizona moves up the list or off the list. And Washington moves on. He was not in the bottom pitching the previous week, but he is now the 4th worst pitching. Not not unexpected. No ragging on these guys. It's just what it is. Just one more thing to put numbers up on, but hasn't changed a whole lot. We might see some. Milwaukee was in, I think, both of these lists, and now doesn't really show up anymore. So getting an owner that's paying attention has worked out well for Milwaukee. I mean, just seeing him getting off of the bottom list, I don't know that we'll see that for San Francisco, and that's not to the detriment of Josh, but we know that he traded away Soto and Tatis. You can't expect to climb out of the bad end of hitting rankings by dealing Soto and Tatis. So, it's not anything that he didn't know was coming, but that's how that looks. I don't think I really have too much else for week 11. No, not really. I was very happy again to get out with one win. Starting to get healthy. Gallen looked good yesterday. Still, didn't go 7 innings or anything, but I do have my playoff hopes still alive as my team maybe starts to come around and put it together in the second half. I don't think there's too many that are definitely. I mean, we have a handful of teams that are definitely out of it, but kind of like the NBA, we're going to see some sub 500 teams in the playoffs. I don't necessarily know. I don't want to say it's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, it's year one of the league. Just to me personally, it seems weird to have a sub 500 team in the playoffs, and I'm trying to be one. I'm trying to be one of those sub 500 teams that maybe squeaks into the playoffs. But to me, it doesn't feel like you should. But in a 30-team league, a lot of teams are going to make the playoffs. I don't necessarily want it to be super top-heavy where only the division winners make the playoffs or something crazy like that. So, but we're getting close to All-Star break. Still a lot of ball left to be played. Still a lot of weeks left to be played. A lot of matchups. But, oh, man, yeah. You know what? One other thing. Don, Cal Ripken guy, check it out. That's Ripper. They gave him pretty good numbers. They gave Eddie Murray really good numbers. But, yeah, that's the old Ripken and Eddie Murray MLB Jam shirt. I know you're the Ripken guy. All right, so that's week 11. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you soon, hopefully.